beginning to disturb. It's beginning to disturb. It's beginning to disturb. That's good. Very off the cuff. But the thing is, you haven't seen the portrait in the loft. Portrait in the loft. What of the great relation?
No.
Portrait in the loft. Play.
Dorian Gray.
Yes. We thought we might as well while we're here.
It's dark.
I think it's dark here. But hopefully it won't be dark like there.
Well, the thing is that
maybe that. Hello.
But then I feel like you're snipping.
So we're just snipping in, so wish everybody good luck and things.
Oh God, go away!
Oh, I forgot to mention, we've also got the video camera on running. I didn't mention that
Thank
today.
you very much. But well, I am the star of the
The
show.
stenographer.
Is the star.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's the most
It's
important
a
thing to have
very
me on.
important role. I've seen the national tour of this play and I know just how important that part is. It's,
well, I mean, if I go...
Now, waist up. Good evening. Nipping to say hello. The star dressing room. Just look, can we do the waist up shot then, please? It's because this man's going to be a very famous actor and this might be held against us if we...
got knickers on.
Yes.
They've all used this dressing room. Black.
Jethro, Grumbleweeds.
You're looking forward to my show, are you?
We're looking forward to
This is Ted Shepherd, I don't know if you know him, he has a small part. Very small
A bit personal.
Very small part.
Ted Shepherd was also featured in the recently filmed Virgin Ivory film
That's
Remains
right,
of the
yes.
Day. Same one?
Yes.
Yes, but I didn't like to talk about it.
No. Oh, right.
He was working with a little-known actor.
Little known names.
Anthony Hopkins.
No, not
Cameron
so many of them nowadays.
It's not, of course, it's not usual for big part players to share a dressing room with a star. I am prepared to make an exception in Ted's case, and I give him a chance.
Yes. Marvellous.
Thanks. Mark, coming after. Joined up with Lady Metcalf.
I did, yeah. He was telling me.
Deliberately because there was two people asleep in the front row.
I don't want to be bloody filmed at the moment.
What was that second word?
Get out of there.
What was that second word beginning with B? You're not allowed to swear on camera.
Hello, Julia. What? This is a shit one.
Look, let me just see. Anthony Blair Booth QC, Clive Dark.
That's right, that's right.
That's the boy.
Looking good girl, looking very young and things. Yeah. I ate that.
He's only acted, isn't he?
Good luck. Well,
Where are you filming it from?
balcony. So we can zoom in as close as we want, or zoom out, whichever.
Zoom out.
Which is obviously more appropriate. Yeah, no problem.
You'll mind you the book is really cool.
Yes, I know, I've heard. We may be kicked out, there might not be a video. We might have to do it from the ceiling or
Turn that
something.
bloody thing off, will you?
Fuck that. See you later. Enjoy the last one. Bye. Good evening. Hello. Hi, how you doing? All right? Yeah.
standing in court. All persons who have anything to do before my lords, the Queen's Justices, at the Central Criminal Court, draw near and give your attendance. God save the Queen.
Members of the jury, the defendant, Sir David Metcalfe, Knight, has been charged with one count of murder. To this count, he has pleaded not guilty. Your charge, therefore, is to hearken unto the evidence and say whether he be guilty or no.
Ladies and gentlemen, each one of you is now a member of the jury, whose solemn task it is to try Sir David Metcalfe for murder. This case has already attracted much lurid publicity, but as you embark upon your endeavours, you must put all thoughts from your mind, for the only evidence that counts is the evidence that is heard in this court. When you return home, your family and friends will ask you, what have you been doing at the Old Bailey? If you mention this case, they will not only ask you for your opinion on it, but give you theirs. But they have taken no jury oath, and they have heard no evidence. And in my experience, it is those that have been to court who will tell you what the verdict should be. The springs of justice flow from knowledge, not ignorance. So please, do not talk to anybody about this case, or let them talk to you. It is you, and you alone, who will decide if David Metcalfe is guilty or not guilty of murder. Yes, Mr. Blair Booth.
May it please your lordship. Members of the jury, in this case I appear for the Crown, together with my learned friend, Mr. Cole. The defendant, Sir David Metcalfe QC, has elected to represent himself. With the leave of your lordship, he is assisted by my learned friend, Mr. Pearson. Members of the jury, Crown will not overdwell on its opening address, as I feel certain you're going to find this case a simple one.
I should be very interested to hear your arguments, Mr. Blair Booth. With over 40 years involvement in the law, I have never yet come across a simple case.
Please, your lordship. Members of the jury, you'll find there's only one count on the indictment, that of murder, the deliberate, non-accidental, cold killing of Lady Millicent Metcalfe by the defendant, her husband, Sir David Metcalfe. It gives me no pleasure to appear for the Crown on this occasion. Sir David, as you know, has had a distinguished legal career, and I'm sure you are aware he's an ornament of the bar and indeed chairman of the Bar Council. So you'll realise how distressing it is for me to find myself prosecuting a former colleague. But I have not avoided that grave responsibility, realising that no man can be above the law, and justice must always seem to be done. The Crown will present a case, members of the jury, which will convince you beyond reasonable doubt that Sir David Metcalfe did willfully murder his wife in the early hours of March the 24th this year. The Crown will show that the relationship between Sir David and Lady Metcalfe was not a happy one, and in the period preceding her death had become acrimonious. Earlier in the evening in question, the two of them had quarrelled openly and noisily, and later, when the opportunity to poison Lady Metcalfe became so opportune, Sir David grasped at the chance to rid himself of his loyal and wonderful wife. The Crown will also show how he went about it, how he went about the evil task, knowingly and deliberately administering the wrong medicine to Lady Metcalfe, thus giving her a lethal overdose of the drug cyclotoxilex. The Crown would call witnesses to show a clear motive for this calculated murder, and most important of all, a witness to the murder itself. The Crown will leave no room for doubt about the actions taken by Sir David Metcalfe in the early hours of that fateful March morning. And you will, we submit, be left with no alternative but to find Sir David guilty, unhappy and unpalatable though it may be. Now that we call our first witness, Inspector Travers.
Inspector Travers.
Take the testament in your right hand and read from the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Is your name Richard William Travers, and are you a Detective Chief Inspector with the Serious Crime Squad?
Yes, sir?
On the 24th of March last, when Lady Metcalf was killed...
Objection, my lad.
I apologize, my lord. I should have said died.
As though it was never your intention to do so.
Inspector, you, I think, can produce a copy of the death certificate. It's an agreed document in the jury bundle, my lad. Under the heading Cause of Death, what do we read, Inspector?
The certificate states natural causes, my lord, and then the word lymphosarcoma.
At the time, did you have any good reason to doubt the accuracy of this certificate?
No, sir.
No one came forward to suggest that this death might have been other than that of natural causes?
No, sir.
Sir David never made any effort to contact you personally or the police in general?
No, sir.
And what first aroused your suspicion, Inspector?
The appearance at Wimbledon Police Station of Lady Metcalfe's housekeeper, Mrs. Eileen Rogers.
Did she make a written statement on that occasion?
Yes, sir.
And what was the substance of that statement?
She stated that she had witnessed Sir David Metcalfe poison his wife in the early hours of March 24th. She claimed that she had clearly seen him administer a fatal dose of the drug psychotoxics, even though he must have been aware that she had taken a similar dosage only a few hours before. She said she watched him put it in a cup of tea.
What course of action did you take once you learned this information, Inspector?
We obtained an exhumation order for the removal of the body from Wimbledon Cemetery.
And was this carried out?
Yes, sir. The Chief Home Office pathologist, Sir James Buckley, confirmed that there was a far higher amount of psychotoxics in the body than was consistent with the normal weekly dosage.
My lad, the pathologist report is an agreed document in the jury bundle. When the overdose was confirmed by the Home Office pathologist, what action did you then take, Inspector?
I interviewed Dr. John Whedon, Lady Metcalfe's own doctor, Mrs. Eileen Rogers, the housekeeper, and then Sir David himself. I then made my report and forwarded it to the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yes. Now, you had such a clear indication that Sir David was possibly involved in the poisoning of his wife. Why did you not arrest him immediately?
I did not consider it prudent, sir, to arrest the chairman of the Bar Council on a charge of murder without first obtaining the authority of the DPP.
Quite so, Inspector. One would not wish to arrest someone of such eminence as Sir David Metcalfe unless one was absolutely certain of one's
Objection,
crime.
lad. This sort of comment is quite improper and also prejudiced, although not untypical.
Yes, Mr. Blair Booth, you must avoid trying to be both judge, jury, and prosecuting counsel, a convenient but undesirable trinity.
I apologize, my lad. I merely wanted the jury to realize the care and forbearance shown by the inspector before he considered arresting Sir David. Could you tell the jury what happened next, Inspector?
I obtained a warrant for the arrest of Sir David Metcalfe, which I executed at his home in Wimbledon on the afternoon of April 11th. I charged him with the murder of his wife, Lady Metcalfe.
When you arrested Sir David, Inspector, how did he react?
He seemed distraught.
Oh, he seemed distraught. Did he say anything?
He volunteered no statement, sir.
He volunteered no statement after being arrested for the murder of his wife?
No, sir.
Thank you, Inspector.
Do you wish to cross-examine Sir David?
I do, my lad. Inspector, when making an arrest, is it not your duty to inform the accused person that he need not make a statement?
Yes, sir.
Did you in my case?
No, sir.
Why not?
It seems somewhat superfluous with one of the leading legal authorities in the land, and indeed proved so.
However, you did not carry out the Home Office recommended procedure.
No, sir.
Inspector, if I had killed my wife in the manner indicated by the crime, Surely I could have destroyed the evidence quite simply by having her body cremated.
Most criminals think they're cleverer than the law, sir. That's usually how we catch them.
You told the court that I seemed distraught when you arrested me. Could this not have been a reaction to the recent death of my wife and all the unnecessary unpleasantness that had surrounded the post-mortem?
I can't say, sir. It was some weeks after the event.
The event? Some weeks? Queen Victoria remained distressed for over 40 years after the death of her husband, Inspector. No further questions, my lord.
Inspector, did Sir David seem distressed before you told him you were going to arrest him?
That's somewhat difficult to say, my lord. I was so nervous at the prospect of arresting the chairman of the bar council, I just put the charge to him the moment I walked through the door.
I see. Thank you, Inspector. Your next witness, Mr. Blair Booth.
I'd like to call Mrs. Eileen Rogers.
Mrs. Eileen Rogers.
Take the testament in your right hand and read from the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Would you like to be seated, Mrs. Rogers?
Oh, thank you, no, I'll stand.
As you wish.
Is your name Eileen Rogers?
Yes, it is.
And where do you live?
Do I have to tell you with him here?
Could you speak up, Mrs. Rogers?
Do I have to tell you with him here?
No, I don't think that would be necessary, Mrs. Rogers. But did you previously live at 44 The Oaks, Wimbledon, the home of the late Lady Metcalf?
Yes, I did.
Could you please address your remarks to the jury, Mrs. Rogers? Thank you.
And were you in the former employ of Sir David and Lady Metcalf as housekeeper and general help?
Yes, I worked for Lady Metcalf for over 7 years and lived in the house for nearly 3, ever since my husband deserted me. But I've since left to take up employment elsewhere.
Understandably. Mrs. Rogers, I'd like to start off by going over what you remember of the evening of March the 23rd from the moment that Sir David arrived home.
Yes, my lord.
No, you don't call me my lord. I have to call me sir and his lordship, my lord.
Yes, sir.
Did Sir David arrive home early or late that night?
Oh, late. He was nearly always late.
Did this cause any unpleasantness between Sir David and Lady Metcalf?
Oh, not from Lady Metcalf. But Sir David could always pick a quarrel over the slightest thing, especially when he was in one of his moods.
My lord, I must object. This is quite absurd.
You will have your chance to cross-examine the witness, Sir David, as well you know.
Lordship pleases.
So Sir David did arrive home late, and Lady Metcalf seemed distressed by this.
Yes, she told him he was a drunk, and that alcohol would destroy his brain.
And what was his reply to that?
He became angry, shouted at her. He said, "You will regret those words, woman." And then he hit her.
He hit her? He hit her? You actually saw him hit her?
Oh, no, sir, but I heard her plead with him not to hit her again.
And then what happened?
Well, I tried to think up an excuse to get back into the drawing room as quickly as possible.
And did you?
Yes, I made Lady Metcalf a cup of coffee and went in early to give her her pills.
Yes, well, we'll come to that in a moment, Mrs. Rogers. Can I ask you, first of all, did Sir David drink a lot that night?
Well, his breath smelt of alcohol when he came home. Then he drank a bottle of wine and later another bottle. I know because I cleared them away.
So by the end of the evening, would you say that Sir David was drunk?
My lord, I must object. That is yet another outrageous leading question.
All right, let's just say that Sir David arrived home smelling of alcohol and then continued to drink 2 bottles of wine. I'm sure even Sir David can't call that a leading question.
No, it's not even a question.
Don't recall just now, Mr. Rogers, how you were trying to think up some excuse to return to the drawing room.
Yes, I went in as soon as possible to give Lady Metcalf her pills so she could take them and go to bed.
And what were these pills, Mrs. Rogers?
She takes a once-a-week pill once a week and a sleeping pill every night.
What do you mean by once-a-week pill?
It's a large red pill. It's very powerful. Oh, afraid I cannot remember its name.
My lad, I think Mrs. Rogers is referring to the drug cyclotoxolix. On the night in question, did Lady Metcalfe take her red pill, the once-a-week pill?
Yes, she did.
And then a white sleeping pill?
Yes, sir. It's about 10:15.
So she should not have taken another red pill for at least 7 days?
Correct, sir. Those were the clear instructions I was given by Dr. Whedon.
I understand. And was Sir David in the room at the time?
Yes, he was.
And did he witness what was going on?
Well, of course he did. He was standing there, wasn't he?
Yes, but could Sir David have had any way of knowing which pill Lady Metcalfe was taking?
Oh, he must have known, because when I give it to Lady Metcalf, I always call it the once-a-week pill. So he knew all right.
Always. So Sir David had heard the expression before?
Many times.
I see. Tell us what happened then, Mr. Rogers.
Well, Sir David and Lady Metcalf went up to the bedroom.
And did you then go to bed?
Yes, but not until I counted the red pills.
Do you always do that?
Oh, yes, sir, always.
And how many red pills were there in the bottle?
There were 7.
7. Are you certain of that, Mrs. Rogers?
Oh, yes, sir, I'm certain.
After you've gone to your own room, what happened next?
I fell asleep almost immediately, but was woken in the middle of the night.
What time?
About 3 o'clock. I don't know what it was that woke me, but I thought it must be Lady Metcalf. She often used to wake in the night and go downstairs and make herself a cup of tea. So I put on my dressing gown and went downstairs.
And what did you see?
I saw Lady Metcalf alone with Sir David.
Yes.
They couldn't see me. I was on the stairs. He was standing behind her. I saw him drop another red pill into her tea. Well, Lady Metcalf didn't see what he'd done, but I did.
Mrs. Rogers, can you be certain which pill Sir David dropped in the tea?
Oh, yes, I'm certain.
Yes, but how can you be sure?
Well, because of the colour. It was red. At any rate, I counted them again later.
Oh, you counted them again, and how many were there this time?
6.
6. When you saw Sir David had put a red pill in Lady Metcalfe's tea, why did you not say something to him?
Well, because I feared what he might do to me.
You feared what he might do to you. Would you explain to the jury, please, Mrs. Rogers, exactly what you mean by that?
Well, Sir David had a very violent temper, and he often used to shout at me, like he shouted at Lady Metcalf. I was worried that if I said anything, he might, well, hit me as well.
I see. But subsequently, you did make a statement to the police.
Yes, I felt it was wicked he should be allowed to get away with it.
You do understand the full consequences of what you're telling the court, Mrs. Rogers, do you?
Yes, I do. I watched him kill her.
And no more questions, my lad.
Oh, just a moment, madam. I think Sir David might have a few questions put to you.
Certainly have, my lad. I should like to start, Mrs. Rogers, with what you say you remember of the evening 23rd March.
I'll remember everything that happened that night for the rest of my life. I will never forget it.
When you gave my wife her pills, where was I standing?
In the room with Lady Metcalf,
Yes, but where in the room was I standing?
by the drinks table.
You're sure of that?
Yes,
That's at the other end of the room, from the sofa where Lady Metcalf was sitting, isn't it?
yes.
And so it's possible I might not have seen which pill Lady Metcalf took.
No idea.
Exactly. Now, I should like to turn to what you say you saw a few hours later.
Well, wait a moment. I called it the once-a-week pill, so you must have known.
Yes, we have only your word for that.
You've only your word to say I didn't.
As now, you say you stood on the stairs and you saw me put a pill in my wife's tea.
Yes.
And you knew it was the cyclotoxolix because the pill was red.
Yes.
All right. How far would you say it was from the stairs to the sofa where Lady Metcalf was sitting?
What do you mean?
I think you know exactly what I mean, Mrs. Rogers, but let me make it easier for you. Would you say you were at about the same distance from me then as you are now?
Yes, it's about the same distance.
Good. Then perhaps you can tell me the colour of the pills in these 3 bottles, Mrs. Rogers.
My lad, are we to be subjected to a conjuring trick by the defence?
I am as intrigued as you are, Mr. Blair Booth. Do carry on, Sir David.
Right. What is the colour of the pills in this bottle, Mrs. Rogers?
Blue. Red. Green.
1 out of 3, Mrs. Rogers. That could hardly be called beyond a reasonable doubt. And there were, if I'm not mistaken, 2 bottles of pills by Lady Metcalfe's side. What was in the other bottle?
Sleeping pills.
And was Lady Metcalfe allowed to take more than 1 sleeping pill?
The doctor didn't give me any instructions about those.
Well, then let me ask you, did Lady Metcalfe sometimes take more than 1 sleeping pill if she couldn't get to sleep?
Yes.
Then it might have been the sleeping pill, might it not, that you saw me put in my wife's tea?
No, it wasn't. It was the red once-a-week pill.
Is it possible, Mrs. Rogers, that despite having worked for my wife for some considerable time, you misunderstood the relationship between us?
Well, what do you mean?
Exactly what I say.
Mrs. Rogers, do you think Sir David and Lady Metcalfe got on well, but you didn't fully appreciate their relationship?
No, my lord, that's not possible. Well, I watched them together over a number of years. Lady Metcalfe was a charming woman. But Sir David was always drunk and shouting at both of us.
Now, I think what Mrs. Rogers is trying to tell the court, my lad, is that she doesn't like me.
No, I don't.
No. In fact, you don't have a good word to say for me, do you?
If there was anything good to say, I'll be happy to tell the judge.
So you're only interested in saying harmful things?
No, I didn't say that. You're trying to put words into my mouth like you do with everybody. I only want the truth to come out.
The truth, as you imagined you saw it. Now, what was it you reported me as saying to my wife? Woman, you will regret this, or words to that effect?
Yes.
And that I hit her?
Yes.
And then she begged for mercy?
Yes, I could hear it all clearly from the kitchen.
Have you ever heard of play acting, Mrs. Rogers? Is it not possible that you gained a totally false impression of what was really happening in the drawing room?
I don't understand.
Agreed.
I think you might have confused her, Sir David. I am not convinced that she fully understands.
I doubt she understands anything at all, my lad, except her own prejudices.
Sir David, that comment should not have been made. The jury would disregard that last statement. Do you wish to re-examine Mr. Blair Booth?
I do, my lad, yes. Mrs. Rogers, about the test Sir David surprised you with just now, you failed to distinguish between the green and blue pills. Would you please tell the court, did Lady Metcalfe take any green or blue pills?
No, only red and white.
Exactly, and that's the colour which you did identify correctly. Yes. Mrs. Rogers, would you please tell me the colour of the pills in this bottle?
White.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. I'd like to call Dr. John Wheaton.
Dr. John Whedon.
Take the testament in your right hand and read from the card. I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Are you Dr. John Wheaton of 13 Beckers Hill Drive, Wimbledon?
I am.
And are you a registered medical practitioner?
Yes.
And were you the late Lady Metcalfe's doctor?
Yes, and Sir David's.
Dr. Wheaton, would you please tell the court how you came to hear of Lady Metcalfe's death?
Sir David called me in the early hours of March the 24th. I went to his home immediately, but when I arrived, Lady Metcalfe was already dead.
What time was that, Dr. Wheaton?
Sir David called me around 5:30 in the morning. I must have reached his home a little after 6.
And what hour would you put the time of death?
Approximately 4 a.m.
4 a.m.
Yes.
So when Sir David called you, his wife would possibly been dead for more than an hour.
Apparently so.
It does not concern you, Doctor, that Sir David waited for possibly well over an hour before contacting you?
No, it's not uncommon for a bereaved husband or wife to wait alone with their dead spouse for some considerable time. Sometimes they refuse to accept that death has actually taken place.
And in your professional opinion, this was death by natural causes?
Yes.
Would you describe yourself as a close friend of Sir David, Dr. Wheaton?
I would like to think so.
What is the purpose of this line of questioning, my lad? Is Mr. Blair Booth suggesting a conspiracy?
I hope that is not the case, Mr.
Blair Booth?
Oh, far from it, my lad. Sir David wronged me. It is, in fact, the exact opposite of what I'm trying to establish. Namely, that Dr. Whedon was purposely misled into believing that this was death by natural causes, whereas Sir David knew exactly what he'd done. So, Dr. Whedon, at no time did you suspect that Lady Metcalf had been given an overdose of drugs?
At no time.
Would you describe Lady Metcalf as the kind of person who would take her own life?
No, sir. Although one can never be sure in these cases.
Dr. Whedon, did you write the prescription for the cyclotoxylix?
Yes, I did.
When?
On, February the 23rd.
I see. And how many pills did you prescribe?
12.
12.
Yes, enough to last for 3 months.
And one a week?
Yes.
So that's the 23rd, yes? They
Yes.
started immediately?
Yes.
That's March the 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, yeah?
Yes.
5 weeks.
Yes.
So there should have been how many remaining? 7?
I suppose so.
You suppose so? Have I miscounted?
No.
But you didn't exactly count how many pills were left in the bottle, did you, Doctor?
Yes, I did, but not in the sense as you mean. It was just to check how many there were.
I see. And even that didn't make you revise your opinion into the cause of death?
No.
Well, perhaps I can, Doctor. Could anyone who had read the label on the bottle be in any doubt about what would happen if you took an overdose?
No, I don't think so.
Well, let's be absolutely sure, shall we, Dr. Whedon? Will you be so kind as to read out to the court the instructions written on the label? Exhibit 1, my lad. Yes, Dr. Whedon?
The cyclotoxylix, 1 pill, 2.5 grams every 7 days. Keep in a locked cupboard. Any excess of the prescribed drug could prove fatal.
Could prove fatal. Admirably clear, Doctor, yes? Yet you were surprised by the police investigation and the pathologist's report.
Yes, I was.
One final point, Dr. Whedon. When you examined Lady Metcalf, did you find any bruises on the body?
Yes, I found an extensive bruise on the outside of her right forearm.
Which could have been caused by a blow?
It might have been, I suppose.
From a bottle, perhaps?
Unlikely, I would have thought.
Why, if I aimed a blow at you with a bottle and you warded it off,
I
yes?
suppose it might have.
You suppose it might have? Thank you, Doctor.
Dr. Whedon, how long have you been Lady Metcalf's doctor?
17 years.
And so it would be fair to say that you knew the family well.
Yes, I had that privilege.
At the time in question, was Lady Metcalf suffering from any illness?
Yes, I've been treating her for the previous 14 months for lymphosarcoma.
What, Dr. Whedon, is that in layman's language?
A cancer of the lymph glands.
Was Lady Metcalf on any drugs?
Yes, cyclotoxylix.
And she was in considerable pain?
Yes, frequently. One might almost say constantly. It was only her tremendous courage that gave her the will to live.
Then her death might have been a blessing in disguise.
Objection, my lord. Dr. Whedon cannot be asked to pronounce the innermost thoughts of the Almighty.
I agree. Members of the jury, you would disregard that last statement. Try more carefully, Sir David.
I apologize, my lord.
You need not answer that question, Dr. Whedon.
I prayed that she would die.
I beg your pardon.
I prayed that she would die, my lord. She was such a good person. She did not deserve to be in such pain.
The jury must disregard that statement as well. It has no bearing on the case. Please pursue another line of questioning, Sir David.
As you wish, my lord. I should now like to return to the bruise on my right arm, which the learned friend emphasized in his earlier examination. Did I give you a full explanation as to how that bruise came about?
Yes, you informed me that Lady Metcalf had stumbled and fallen.
And was the bruise consistent with such a fall?
Yes, one automatically throws out an arm to break such a fall.
I see. Now, Doctor, you have testified that Lady Metcalf was in considerable pain from an incurable cancer for which you had been administering drugs for the past 14 months. Would you say, Doctor, that she was on the point of death and might even have died that night?
It's possible.
And would it ever have occurred to you that I could have killed my wife with an overdose of drugs?
Never.
Could there be any other explanation for this overdosage?
Yes, in my view, Lady Metcalf had been on these drugs for some considerable time, which would have caused a general
The
build-up.
pathologist's report states...
I agree, Mr. Blair Booth. Dr. Wheaton, I fully understand how unpleasant it must be for you to give evidence concerning a close friend. But it does not give you the liberty to offer personal opinions which are contrary to agreed evidence. The jury must again disregard that last statement.
Returning to the cyclotoxins, Doctor, there were only 6 pills left in the bottle.
Yes.
And there should have been 7. So an excess amount had been taken.
Apparently so.
But not necessarily on that particular evening.
My lord, the pathologist...
Yes, Mr. Blair Booth. Members of the jury, the pathologist's report clearly indicates that there was an excess of the drug found in the body at the time, an amount which is inconsiderate or inconstituent to the suggestions that Dr. Wheaton and Sir David are trying to pursue. You wish to carry on this track, sir?
No, my lad, no more questions. Thank you, Dr. Wheaton.
You wish to be examined, Mr. Blair Booth?
Oh, I certainly do, my lord, yes. Dr. Wheaton, you said that Lady Metcalf was near to death and it's possible that she might have died that night. Would you say that that was possible or probable?
Possible.
Possible, not probable. But if she had not died that night of an overdose of cyclotoxilics, as was clearly stated in the pathologist's report, how long do you think she might have hoped to have lived for?
Oh, I couldn't venture an opinion on that.
Oh, come now, Dr. Wheaton, don't be coy. Just now you said in your professional opinion that you thought that it was possible that she might have died that night. Surely you can give us some idea in your professional opinion on how long you think she might have lived for.
Well, I suppose she might have lived another 2, possibly 3 years.
3 years?
It's possible, at the outside.
Is it? I'd like to ask your professional opinion about something else, Doctor. Lymphosarcoma. Research is being done into this kind of cancer, yes, with a hope of a breakthrough which will help people such as Lady Metcalfe.
Extensive research is being carried out at the Chester Beat Institute in particular, but to date there's been no sign of any breakthrough.
Well, let me ask you, do you think a breakthrough is possible within the next 3 years?
Well, it must be possible, yes.
Oh, it must be possible, yes. No more questions, my lad. My lad, I call Lionel Hamilton.
Lionel Hamilton.
Take the testament in your right hand and read from the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Lionel Hamilton, a solicitor of the Supreme Court and a senior partner of Hamilton Gray and Company?
Yes, sir.
And your firm were the solicitors to the late Lady Metcalfe and Sir David Metcalfe?
We have that honor.
Did Lady Metcalfe leave a will, Mr. Hamilton?
She did, sir.
And who were the beneficiaries?
A few small amounts were left to charities, but the bulk of the estate was left to her husband, Sir David Metcalfe.
What is the bulk of the estate, Mr. Hamilton?
Is this relevant, Willard?
I suspect we're about to find out, Sir David. Please continue, Mr. Hamilton.
The home in Wimbledon in which they lived.
And who owned the house in Wimbledon, Mr. Hamilton?
Lady Metcalfe.
What else did Lady Metcalfe leave her husband?
Some shares and cash.
I see. So the total amount of Sir David's inheritance was what? Well, surely you must know, for probate purposes, what was the total amount of Sir David's inheritance?
Including the house?
Oh, yes, let's have the full amount of Sir David's inheritance, yes.
Just over £1 million.
Just over £1 million?
Less than a third of that would be in cash, of course.
Yes, of course. Well, so for the first time in his life, Sir David was a very rich man.
I would say, with respect, sir, that for the first time in his life, Sir David was a poor man.
Would you not say he was an extremely wealthy man?
That depends on how you measure wealth, Mr. Blair Booth.
Well, I agree with you, Mr. Hamilton. But if I had £1 million, I would class myself as extremely wealthy. As I'm sure the jury would, if not all of them. No more questions, my lad.
Mr. Hamilton, there is no suggestion, is there, that I was at any time financially embarrassed?
Not to my knowledge, Sir David.
Or that I was in any particular need of money?
You have received for many years a healthy income from the bar where your services were greatly sought after.
How long have you known my wife and myself?
I had served you both for over 20 years.
And what was your opinion of our relationship?
Not the reproach. One could only admire, indeed, envy you both.
A good and faithful servant.
No more questions, my lad. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Can I ask you, Mr. Hamilton, how often you saw Sir David and Lady Metcalf together? Every day? Once a week? Or once a month?
I couldn't give an exact term.
Or perhaps it's once a year, is it?
No, nearer to once a month.
Isn't it possible, then, that Sir David could put on an act of pretense, as if he was caring for Lady Metcalf, whereas in fact only someone who was actually living in the house would know the real truth?
If that was the case, sir, then it was an act sustained over a period of 20 years, without one bad performance by either party.
Yes, but that would depend on how you imagined it, Mr. Hamilton, would it not? No more questions, my lad. That concludes the case with Crane. I shall be calling no more witnesses.
Very well then, I think we might as well adjourn for lunch and resume again at 2 o'clock.
The outstanding in court.
Only Sir David Metcalfe, my lord.
As you wish.
I've just been handed this by our instructing solicitor.
Follow it up immediately, will you? Give me the exact figures. Yes, it's very interesting. I'll keep Sir David on his feet as long as I can.
Read from the card, please, Sir David.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
You are Sir David Metcalfe, one of Her Majesty's counsel, learned in law, and you reside at 44 The Oaks, Wimbledon?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury in your own words, Sir David, what happened on the evening of the 23rd of March this year and the early morning of the 24th?
Yes. After being held up in court, I decided to have a quick dinner at my club and arrived home a little after 8:30. My wife seemed depressed, so I opened a bottle of wine in the hope that it might cheer her up. It, or I, raised her spirits for a while, but I suspect that she must have once again been concealing considerable pain. Sometime before 10, after she had taken her pills, I helped her up to bed.
And then what happened, Sir David?
I too went to bed and fell asleep quickly. But at about 3 o'clock I was woken by a noise which seemed to come from downstairs. Alarmed when I found my wife was not at my side, I ran downstairs where I found Millie lying on the drawing room floor. I picked her up and helped her to the sofa.
Was she unconscious?
No, but badly shaken by her fall.
Then what happened, Sir David?
She asked me if I would make her a cup of tea, and I went immediately into the kitchen. When I returned with the tea, the pain was obviously much greater than it had been the previous evening. She had the pill bottles in her hand and was fumbling with one of them, trying to open it. She handed the pills to me and asked if I would put one in her tea, which I did.
And what colour was this pill she handed you?
I don't remember. I was only, at the time, concerned with my wife's condition. I prayed that she would find relief in the medicine.
Yes.
And then, thank God, she did. I took the tea from her, and she seemed to slip into a restful sleep. I considered it better just to hold on to her, rather than to try to get her back up to bed, perhaps disturbing her. Then she started to grow cold, and I could no longer hear her breathing. I tried to find a pulse, but could feel nothing. That was when I called Dr. Wheaton. He came right away within the hour and confirmed my worst fears.
I see. I apologise for the next question, Sir David, aware of all that you've been through, but were you happily married, or is it, as your housekeeper suggests, you quarrelled continually on the evening in question?
We did not quarrel, Mr. Pearson. The only things we ever disagreed about were Dylan Thomas and cricket. I only wish she was still alive so that I could quarrel with her now.
Thank you, Sir David. Any more questions, my lord?
Blair Booth? Sir David, have you conducted many murder defences over the years?
Many.
And have you had a high success rate?
One that you would be pleased with, no doubt.
Does this experience stretch to murder by poisoning?
It does.
So this is not a new experience for you?
Not exactly.
So you would know only too well how to present a good defence in a good case, would you not, Sir David?
Yes.
I don't have to remind you, Sir David, of all people, only to answer the questions put to you. Let us at least agree on one thing. You have no rival at the bar when it comes to defending a weak case. The jury can rest assured that their opinions are excellent.
You were never willing to admit as much in the past.
Tell me first, Sir David, do you believe Mrs. Rogers, your housekeeper, to be a dishonest woman?
No.
So in your opinion, Mrs. Rogers is an honest soul, yes? So let's return to her account of the evening of March the 23rd last, shall we? Did you earlier that evening strike your wife because she accused you of drunkenness?
Certainly not. We were play acting, not at all serious, and I only pretended to hit her.
Play acting, not serious, you only pretended to hit her. Yet that pretense caused very real bruising on her forearm.
The bruising was caused by my wife falling while I was in the bedroom.
We only have your word for that, Sir David. You amused us all a moment ago by telling us that you only ever quarrelled over Dylan Thomas and cricket. But is that entirely true? Didn't you have a more serious quarrel that evening, having arrived home late and drunk?
I was not late in the sense of being beyond any appointed hour. I had been delayed in court and then had something to eat at my club.
And drink, Sir David?
Yes, I had a little wine.
If your wife was in so much pain, might it not have been more considerate of you to have gone straight home like any loyal and devoted husband would in the circumstances?
I always tried to put her to as little inconvenience as possible.
By coming home late and starting a quarrel?
We did not quarrel.
Not even a mock quarrel?
A mock quarrel, perhaps.
Overheard by Mrs. Rogers?
So she claimed.
Mock threatening to hit your wife?
Play acting, joking.
Play acting, joking. With a dying wife?
Oh, for heaven's sake, I was trying to keep her spirits up.
By shouting at her?
Yes. Married couples over the years develop their own private brand of humour. It is not meant to be shared by the public or dissected in court.
This was certainly not meant to be shared by the public or dissected in court. Or had it been, they might too have misunderstood.
Yes.
As Mrs. Rogers misunderstood.
Yes.
And as others might also misunderstand. Let's turn to something else now, Sir David, shall we? Had you had a lot to drink before you arrived home that night?
No more than usual.
Oh, That is a singularly uninformative answer, but I won't embarrass you by asking you to quantify what is your usual. Let's just say that you had your usual, and then you drank 2 bottles of Newton Rothschild 61 before you retired to bed.
Yes.
Don't you think that's rather excessive?
Not in the circumstances.
Circumstances?
I was depressed. We both were, about my wife's continuing illness.
You don't think it was your excessive drinking that caused your wife such distress, do you?
No, sir. I'm not an alcoholic, Mr. Blair Booth, if that is what you are suggesting.
Alcoholic? I never mentioned the word, sir.
No, but it's what you meant.
That is not what I meant, sir, but it was your excessive drinking that caused you to quarrel with your wife. That is what I meant.
We did not quarrel at all that night. Mrs. Rogers has entirely misunderstood the relationship between my wife and myself.
Raise your voice any louder, Sir David. It's possible that the jury might also misunderstand, yes, and think that you did lose your temper that night. So let's sum up, shall we? You did not quarrel with your wife because you were drunk, and you did not hit your wife. Mrs. Rogers imagined all these things which can be explained away by a picture of normal wedded bliss.
If you had ever married Mr. Blair Booth, you might begin to understand.
Let's turn to something else now, David, shall we? Let's turn to the estate of the late Lady Metcalfe and the beneficiary. Do I understand that because of your wife's death, you have come into a fortune of just over £1 million?
Including the house, yes.
What was your personal financial position while your wife was still alive?
I had a few shares and a small overdraft.
Oh, that sounds very modest, Sir David. You must spend a great deal. How much does a bottle of Newton Rothschild cost?
I'm sure you've already inquired, Mr. Blair Booth, but I wouldn't know. I was fortunate enough to inherit my wine cellar.
Oh, another inheritance. Were you married before?
No, it came from my former head of chambers.
Who obviously knew your habits.
Who also knew that I prefer fine wine to inferior cross-examination.
Would your lordship grant me a moment?
Certainly.
David, I'd like to return to your financial position.
My lord, I must object. Is this leading anywhere?
I think it is time you came to the point, Miss Blair Booth, if there is one.
No, there is indeed, my lad, there is indeed. Sir David, can you confirm or deny that preceding your wife's death, you owed the city stockbrokers, Gilbert and Goddard, £281,000 and was being pressed for payment?
Yes. I had invested in some shares on the advice of an old friend. The shares plummeted when the rumour of a takeover bid failed to materialise. Unfortunately, I found myself unable to pay the full amount when the account became due.
A rumour of a takeover bid on the advice of an old friend. Wouldn't it be more accurate to say that government inspectors were sent in to go over the company books because they suspected insider trading?
Yes, sir, but I knew nothing of it.
So you were not involved in insider trading?
If I had been, I wouldn't have lost all my money.
All your money, Sir David? Did I hear you right then? All your money? Now that we've established that, let's try and discover how this came about. You bought shares with money which you did not have.
On margin, yes. It's an established city practice.
Oh, it's something that you've done before?
Once or twice.
Then would I be right in saying this was not your first disastrous transaction in share dealing?
I have had a rather bad run of luck lately, yes.
So shares were purchased in your name with money which you did not have, and you were being pressed to pay £281,000.
Yes, I was.
In the period immediately preceding your wife's death?
Yes.
By whom were you being pressed? Gilbert and Goddard?
Yes, and Mr. Holbrook, a junior partner.
So Mr. Holbrook was pressing you in particular? In what way was he pressing you?
Well, at first, by impertinent telephone calls. He was worried that if I did not pay up in time, he would lose his job.
I'm not surprised. Did he phone you at home?
Yes, and even at my chambers.
Oh dear, how very inconvenient for you, Sir David. What would have happened if you'd failed to pay the debt on time? To your career, I mean.
You know the answer to that, Mr. Blair Booth. I would undoubtedly have been disbarred as a practicing barrister.
And no doubt would have had to have resigned as chairman of the Bar Council.
Yes.
Finally, Sir David, on the fatal evening in question, did you see your wife take the pills from the bottle before she retired to bed?
Yes, but I was at the other end of the room.
Yes, but did you see her take the pills from the bottle?
I believe she did, yes.
And did you hear Mrs. Rogers say that she must take her once a week?
Yes, I believe I made some joke about it.
Oh, another joke. Did your wife laugh this time? Not long after your wife retired, did you then also go to bed?
Yes.
Then you claim that you were woken up by the noise of your wife falling.
Yes, although I didn't realize what it was at the time.
And you ran downstairs, made a cup of tea, and she passed you the pills.
That is exactly what happened.
What was the colour of the pill which you administered, Sir David?
I really can't remember.
You can't remember? You can't remember? The pill was in your hand. You saw it. You put it in her tea. And you can't remember. Why didn't you look at the label on the bottle before you administered the pill?
I assumed that as Millie had handed me the bottle, she knew what she was doing.
You assumed, Sir David. You assumed. You claim that Lady Metcalf was in extreme pain and deeply depressed. You claim that she had fallen heavily, thus bruising herself. But you still assumed that she knew what she was doing when she handed you a bottle of pills which should have been taken once a week. Surely a husband as devoted as yourself would have at least checked the label. Unless, of course, you wanted to give your wife 2 once-a-week pills in the course of a couple of hours. I suggest, Sir David, here was an easy way out for you. A chance to clear yourself of embarrassing debt, an ailing wife, and the collapse of your career. I suggest, Sir David, that had not the whole episode been witnessed by the loyal and devoted Mrs. Rogers, the truth would still lie buried in a cemetery in Wimbledon. The truth is, Sir David, you assume too much. You assume that you had committed the perfect murder.
No, that is not what happened.
Do you deny having drunk too much that night?
No.
Do you deny that you were embarrassed by substantial debt?
No.
Do you deny that your wife's death allowed you to pay this debt?
No.
Do you deny, then, that you administered the fatal pill?
No, I cannot.
Then can you deny that you willfully murdered your wife?
I can, and I do.
No more questions, my lord.
Do you wish to re-examine today, Mr. Pearson?
Yes, my lord, just a few questions. If Lady Metcalfe had known of this debt, how would you have expected her to react?
Objection, my lord. How could anybody possibly know how Lady Metcalfe might have reacted?
Sir David might. After all, he was her husband. The question is somewhat hypothetical, Mr. Pearson.
Yes, my lord. Sir David, had you mentioned the debt to Lady Metcalfe?
No, I had intended to, but the right occasion never presented itself.
And your motive in not telling her was?
At all times, consideration for her peace of mind. The debt did not bother me personally. I would have repaid it in due course.
How?
From substantial fees due to me and still outstanding.
Sir David, I put to you the same question as the prosecution, but without malice. Did you have too much to drink that night?
In the sense that it affected my judgment, no.
Could your financial embarrassment have motivated you to murder?
Of Holbrook, perhaps, for impertinent telephone calls. Of my wife, never.
Did you love your wife?
Deeply. She brought wit and humour, gentleness and understanding into my life. and made our marriage an experience of happiness which I shall never forget or cease to be grateful for. Yes, sir, I loved her.
Did you murder Lady Metcalf?
I did not. I assure you, I did not.
Thank you, Sir David. I shall be calling no more witnesses, my lord. That concludes the case for the defence.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Members of the jury, let me conclude my summing up by saying it is not my duty to guide you in any particular direction or to let you know my opinion. I am called the judge, but you are the judges. I can only direct you on the law, and the law is straightforward. The burden of proof rests with the prosecution. They must make certain that guilt beyond reasonable doubt. The man is not guilty of murder unless, without lawful excuse, he caused the intent death of another. That is the law, and you are the sole judges in this case. When you have weighed up all the evidence that has been presented to you, you will decide upon your verdict. It would be quite wrong of me to give you any idea of what I think. The verdict is yours alone. Put out of your mind any sympathy, anger, or any other emotions. If the evidence does not satisfy you beyond reasonable doubt, you will bring a verdict of not guilty. But on the other hand, if it does, your verdict, however unpalatable it will be, must be guilty. I do not envy you your task, but you must be resolute in your duty. When the jury bailiff has been sworn, you will consider your verdict and retire, and in due course return to let me know how you find.
I swear by Almighty God that I will well and truly keep this jury in some convenient and private place with such accommodation as the court shall direct. I will not suffer any person to speak to them, neither will I speak to them myself touching the trial had here this day without leave of the court, except to ask whether they have agreed upon their verdict.
Will the defendant please rise? Will the foreman of the jury please stand? Mr. Foreman, do you find the prisoner, Sir David Metcalfe, guilty or not guilty of murder?
Precisely, I imagine that's the problem. Oh, tonight, we're having one of our usual pre-trial dinners. It gives David a chance to rehearse those brilliant off-the-cuff remarks he's so famous for. Mrs. Rogers, would you just bring the wine and glasses in, please? Exactly. Lionel Hamilton's coming, the senior partner of... That's right. And Robert Pearson, David's junior. I'm sure you've met him. Dark-haired and sexy. Yes, I suppose he is. Of course I'll tell David you called. Your paper calls for what? The Seven Oaks scissor stabber. Good heavens, the Times only referred to her as the accused. Well, I must rush now, my dear. Lovely to talk to you. Goodbye. Now, Mrs. Rogers, are the vegetables all prepared?
Oh, they are.
Good. And then if you just check the dining room table, and if my husband isn't too appallingly late home. It's almost on time for a change.
Sorry I'm a bit late, darling. I made the mistake of dropping in at the club and couldn't escape Benson.
Wordy dory, I'm your boy.
How are you, darling? Have you had a good day?
Not bad. Though I can't pretend I've done a lot. I thought about pruning the rose bed. In the end, I just thought about it.
Good, because you're supposed to be taking things easy.
I am. All I did today was to decant a bottle of wine, and then I just collapsed on the sofa and let Mrs. Rogers get on with preparing the dinner. She really is a gem.
Yes, a gem is not how I would describe her.
Nor she you.
Can I get you a drink?
Oh, no, I'm fine. There isn't time, David. You really must go and change.
Well, I will. Don't fuss. I'm the original quick change artist. I should have been in vaudeville.
I thought you were in vaudeville. Oh, David, do hurry. You know the minute the clock strikes 8, Mr. Hamilton will be standing on the doorstep.
Oh, damn it, yes. Has the man never been late?
Not once in the 20 years I've known him. Mr. Hamilton. I'm sorry, Lionel. Mrs. Rogers thinks everyone who comes here must have a title. She's a frightful snob.
Don't let it worry you, dear lady.
Now, can I get you something to drink?
Shall I have myself?
Please do. David should join us shortly. He's just changing.
A little whiskey and a lot of water. Can I get something for you, please?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
I do so enjoy these dinner parties, not to mention the company.
Oh, I wonder David doesn't invite the judge.
Now, Billy. Now then, what have you got up your sleeve for us tonight? Do you remember your menu for the Humphreys the Ascot arson killer?
Smoked ham and steak flambe.
Charles McKellar, the body in the freezer. Vichyssoise, a cold collation.
And baked Alaska.
Lang, the hatchet murderer. Borscht and spare ribs.
How appropriate. What a good memory you have, Lionel. Perhaps I ought to write a cookbook. Everyone else seems to be. I should call it 40 Forensic Feasts.
You are a wonderful hostess, Mynheer.
And you are an old flatterer. As if this was the only place you dine well.
It is.
Don't you gorge yourself regularly at the Law Society?
My dear lady, the Law Society employs the same caterers as Paddington Station. Brown Windsor soup and shepherd's pie. But I must admit that the salmonella is always fresh. The only other contract that they haven't lost is for the House of Lords, where their nannies have always told them that good food is only for sissies. No, yours is the last refuge for an old bachelor.
That must be Robert.
Oh, Pearson, soon to be QC on board. Oh, in that case, forget that I told you.
Mr. Pearson.
Millie.
Robert.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Your usual?
Yes, thank you. Where's the great man? Don't tell me he's not arrived yet.
No, he managed to beat you by a few moments. Well, you're quite right. He did get held up at the Garrett Club en route.
Benson, no doubt.
Benson indeed. Oh. You know, I was once guest of honour at a dinner where the dear fellow was entrusted with the responsibility of introducing me. I should now like to introduce you to Sir David Metcalfe, who, as you all know, for his debatable qualities. Sir David, as you all know, is one of our greatest advocates, and the secret of advocacy is honesty. Once you can fake that, the rest is easy.
Oh, David, well, I think that your mother rang.
What does she want?
Oh, just to run over your defence for the Seven Oaks scissor stabber.
Seven Oaks scissor stabber. She must still be reading the Daily Express. John Rothschild, 61, left to me by my late head of chambers, Danvers Gray, who tried manfully to finish it off before he departed this earth. And had he managed the 80 years and 10, which he regarded as no more than a legal contract with his maker, he would undoubtedly have polished off the lot.
With your assistance, I might add. You used to visit him on the flimsiest pretext, with the sole intention of helping him out.
Of the wine, she means, of course, not this world.
His will was a legal nicety, a joy to read and a pleasure to administer.
How right you are. He wrote it on the back of an unpaid parking ticket and had it witnessed by a meter maid. Litigation over it lasted 3 years, after which there was only enough left to pay the parking fine.
Without him, your career might never have taken off. Don't forget the Hopford murders.
Oh yes, Cardiff Assizes. It was the first time I'd appeared professionally in the city of my birth. My mother sat in the gallery. I never uttered a word, but every time I passed a piece of paper to St Amber's, she applauded.
I never appeared at Cardiff.
Oh, there's nothing quite like Cardiff and the outlying parts of South Wales. And no one can outlie parts of South Wales. My first case as a junior, and I shall never forget the swearing in of the jury. A jury of sensitive, intelligent, cultured Welshmen. And when the clerk of the court told the jurors to take their usual place, they all climbed into the dock. The first one to take the oath looked at the card and said, I swear by Almighty God that I will well and truly try the severe issues joined between our Soviet Lady the Queen. And the third one said, no, my lord, no. I'm not having this. It's not right that I should be on a jury. I'm not fit to serve on a jury, is it? I'm deaf as a post. And he opened his jacket, and there, hanging on his waistcoat pocket, was what looked like a pre-war wireless set with a wire running to his left ear. And he twiddled the knobs, and it oscillated and whistled. And he said, you will see the position is this, my lord. I'm deaf as a post, he said. And if I can't hear the evidence, how can I hope to do justice according to the law? The learned judge trying the case leaned down to the clerk of court and he said, what did he say, Robert?
I do believe the Campbell case on which I instructed you was your breakthrough to success. Alice Campbell, do you remember her?
I do indeed. Theft, perjury, adultery, blackmail, and attempted murder. She certainly conformed to the late Lord Russell's dictum that the 10 Commandments should be treated as an examination paper. Only 5 need be attempted.
Your defence of her launched what has turned out to be a most remarkable career. Your husband has no peer at the criminal bar.
No? Oh, I'm not so sure. It never pays to underestimate Anthony Blair Booth.
Rubbish. You can't underestimate Anthony Blair Booth.
To quote the Times, one of Britain's most distinguished advocates.
Oh, but my dear, Harrow, Christchurch and Lincoln's Inn are quite incapable of producing anyone that might be described as distinguished.
Oh, whereas Cardiff Grammar School, Jesus College and the Inner Temple might.
Oh, precisely, my dear. And what's more, Blair Booth's father was an estate agent, whereas my dear old pater was in finance.
Darling, you're not trying to convince a jury now. Anthony Blair Booth's father was the senior partner of Frank Knight and Rutley, while your dear old dad was a counterclerk in the Swansea Building Society.
And what's more, Blair Booth's father left him a small fortune, whereas all mine left me was my mother. Dying fathers should make provision for their wives and their wills. They should leave them to somebody else.
You adore your mother. Where do you think all that so-called origin comes from? And what's more, she's the only person who shares your own high opinion of yourself. Anyway, I still believe this trial will prove to be a fair contest between equals.
Nonsense. The odds are totally loaded against me. We know that my client was having an affair with a man. We know that her fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. But we know...
Could you give us this against overwhelming odds routine at the start of every trial, so that it will appear all the more impressive when you win?
Which side are you on?
Anyway, do you really believe a jury is going to send a beautiful woman to jail for the rest of her life?
Not if I can get 12 men on the jury, they won't.
Blair won't let you get away with that.
Well, what I need is a dozen middle-aged, oversexed sales reps. Whose wives don't understand it. I think I'll get her to mention her telephone number 2 or 3 times during cross-examination.
I haven't fully recovered from the advice you gave her when she asked, how shall I give my evidence?
What did you say, David?
Well, my dear, I said, just let it come out as if it was the truth.
I think her confidence should impress the jury, though you can never be sure how a witness will turn out if you stay in the box. But what is it you always say, David? Beware of the most confident. They often have the most to hide.
Excuse me, my lady, dinner is almost ready if you'd just like to check.
It's about time, too. I'm famished.
Then be thankful for Mrs. Rogers, because without her there wouldn't be anything.
Let me refill your glasses.
No, thank you.
Robert?
How is she, David?
No better, I'm afraid. Oh, she can still rise to the big occasion like this dinner. She soon pays for it, poor darling. I'm sorry to say that the latest reports leave little room for hope. Oh, they keep taking tests, and pills help kill the pain for a while. The relapses are becoming more and more frequent. They talk about a wonder cure sometime in the future. I fear, we both know that the future is beginning to run out.
Oh, I'm so dreadfully sorry. I've never really been very good with words, but I am sorry.
Oh, let's not talk about it tonight. There's nothing anybody can do, and, well, even to think about it, well, it doesn't help.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to...
No, of course not. And I do appreciate, well, we both do, your concern. Thank you, Lyle.
Good Lord, I had no idea you had a first name, Mr. Hamilton.
You get cheeky, young man. Only elderly court judges, elderly QCs, and the chairman of the Bar Council occasionally can be familiar with Mr. Hamilton.
Though I may make an exception in your case, Pearson, but not until you're a QC.
Are you expecting any bombshells from Blair Booth tomorrow, Lyle?
Oh, none that I'm aware of. None that he would ever let on in any case. He's always so uncooperative, especially when he's up against you.
Why does he take every case so personally?
Well, it's quite simple, really. I was a year behind him at Oxford, and he could never stand the fact that a grammar school boy took from him the 2 things that he assumed were his by right.
What do you mean?
Well, Lionel has known for some time, but Blair Booth proposed to Millie the summer before I arrived at Oxford.
And of course, you picked him to the presidency of the Union.
A minor prize compared to Millie.
A judgment with which I am fully able to concur.
I couldn't have put it more romantically myself.
Do you think Blair Booth holds a party before the trial?
Certainly not.
How can you be so certain?
Because if he did, he'd have to subpoena the guests.
I'm sure you're right.
Right about what, Lionel?
Dylan Thomas.
Dylan Thomas.
Oh, not him again. Do you know, just because David was born in Bridgend and heard the Bard lecture once, he's totally obsessed.
Slander and reliable witnesses to clear my name. I not only attended one of his lectures, but I got drunk with the great man afterwards. Time passes. Listen. Time passes. Come closer now. Only you can hear the houses sleeping in the streets in the slow, deep salt and silent black bandaged night. Only you can see in the blinded windows the combs and petticoats over the chairs, the jugs and basins, the glasses of teeth. Thou shalt not on the wall, and the yellowing dicky-bird pictures of the dead. Only you can hear and see behind the eyes of the sleepers the movements and countries and mazes and colours and dismays and rainbows of tunes and wishes and flights and falls and despairs and the big seas of their dreams. From where you are, you can hear their dreams.
Dinner is served, my lady.
It's all right. I'll take this. You go on in. Robert, would you take the wine in with you? Hello? Yes, speaking. Who is this? Oh, Hope. Did you get the shares? Good. The bid will be announced on Thursday. My source is impeccable. Naturally, I shall want to sell within the account. Well, that will give you 10 clear days. When your senior partner returns from his holiday, I'm sure he'll acknowledge your wise decision. Yes, I'm aware that I've had a rather bad run lately, but I'm about to make it up. Never let you down in the past, have I? The amount is greater this time because my source is even more reliable. I don't see how I could be regarded as an insider. Call me tomorrow, James. Good night. Mr. Hamilton, there is no suggestion, is there, that I was at any time financially embarrassed?
Not to my knowledge, Sir David.
Or that I was in any particular need of money?
No, sir. You have received for many years the most healthy income from the bar, where your services were greatly sought after.
How long have you known my wife and myself?
I have served you both for over 20 years.
And what was your opinion of our relationship?
Above reproach. One could only admire, indeed, envy you both. An appropriate choice for the child of Mrs. Cutts, the finest rare beef.
But did you notice Billy poured the blood back into the gravy?
Simply destroying the evidence, my boy.
And no doubt the reason for producing that irresistible chocolate gateau in the shape of a pair of scissors.
Why not use that sauce?
The rust, you fool, the rust. My God, he's so slow, he reminds me of Geoffrey Boycott.
Not as slow as you were, David, over Mr. Justice Fanshawe QC.
Oh, dear old Gerald.
Dear old Gerald. Did you ever come across Gerald Fanshawe, Robert?
Only by reputation.
He died a few years ago, on the opening day of the Test match at Lord's.
Good Lord, will be that bad?
No. What was bad was that no one noticed until close of play at 6:30.
Said Gerald Fanshawe, who took a visiting African chief to the Lord's Test match, and was rather taken aback when he heard the chief saying in the long room afterwards, he was surprised to find the English still practiced black magic.
Black magic? What did dear old Gerald have to say about that?
And he demands an explanation. Well, says the chief, you take me to a wide open space, surrounded by thousands of people, watching 22 men dressed in tribal white. Then the tallest man hurls a ceremonial ball at a man with a stick, strikes him on the leg. How's that? Shouts all the others on the field. And then a witch doctor, in a long white coat, points his finger at the sky, and it rains for 5 days.
You won't have much time for watching test matches this year, David.
Oh, I don't see why not. The better class of criminal always takes 5 days off for the Lord's Test, so why shouldn't I?
As chairman of the Bar Council, David, you should be making radical changes.
Oh, I certainly hope so. I intend to see that more women are elected to the Bar Council, in the hope that when I retire, we should be able to elect the first woman chairman.
Perish the thought. It's bad enough having women on our profession without having a chairman as one of them. Forgive me for criticising your sex, dear lady, but I do fear that women barristers can only bring the law into disrepute.
With whom?
With the criminals, of course.
Lionel's quite right. The criminal classes are deeply conservative in these matters. No hardened criminal would ever request a woman to defend him. Well, hardly ever.
None of my partners would ever consider helping a woman.
Shame on them, Lionel. We must all be prepared to accept that change is inevitable.
Ah, yes, my dear. But in our profession, they do like to change very slowly.
Quite. And now they're beginning to turn up everywhere. They're not the same as us, my dear.
You've noticed.
I suppose I'm old-fashioned, but I must confess that I am appalled whenever a woman is appointed to the bench.
Oh, come on, that has to happen. I mean, it's no more than common sense. In any case, judges dress up like transvestites. And often behave like old women.
Agreed. In fact, we need a lot more women judges. After all, we did have a woman Prime Minister.
Don't remind me. Oh, heavens, look at the time. I must be off.
Must you go so soon?
Early appointment with dear Mrs. Cutts.
Cutts? That's an unfortunate name for a scissor stabber.
She stabbed no one. It was all a dreadful mistake.
Yes, at 9 o'clock sharp, so I fear I must be off. Another wonderful dinner, my dear. One almost looks forward to a good murder in anticipation. Perhaps when Sir David has won the Beverley Cuts case, you might visit me at my humble abode for a meal.
Oh, but how can we be sure he's going to win the case with that clever Anthony Blair Booth against him?
Ah, conspiracy.
And then I wouldn't be able to accept your kind invitation.
You inviting Millie to dine at your line?
Oh, no. You misunderstand me. The invitation was for both of you. Are you sure this is my coat, David?
Well, in the words of the head porter at Jesus College, Oxford, on being asked the same question by Lord Nuffield, well, sir, I couldn't be certain it's yours, but it's certainly the one you gave me.
Good night, Millicent. And thank you again.
Good night.
Good night, my boy.
Night, sir. He's remarkable, old Hamilton, isn't he? Tends to be out of touch. Underneath the first-class legal mind, sprinkled with years of experience.
A sad man, though, I sometimes think. Lonely.
He should have married someone like you. David is very lucky.
And you, young man, more of an old hand than he is.
What are you talking about, Nick? I'm trying to pick up my wife again.
Never get the chance, sir. Well, now I've been caught out, I suppose I better slink off. How do you say? After 15 years his junior, it's hardly surprising, is it?
You should have taken me as a warning, not an example. Now, come on, Robert, you're not really going. Stand have a nightcap now. 2 nightcaps.
I must be off.
Must you?
Why do people always say must you, and what they really mean is you must? I'll see you at the Old Bailey in the morning, David.
Will you? Of course, I mean you will. 9 o'clock sharp, because one thing's certain, Lionel will be on time.
9 sharp. Don't step too late. And don't underestimate Blair Booth.
This is my junior or my mentor.
Thank you for a wonderful evening, Millie, and a splendid meal as always.
Good night, Robert.
Good night.
Triumph, my darling. Are you all right?
Yes, I'm fine. Tell me, was Lionel hinting when he talked about Robert taking silk?
Yes, this year would be my guess. Oh dear, I don't relish the prospect. I shall miss him as my junior.
Perhaps it's time you gave up and became a curmudgeonly old judge.
Ah, there's a thought.
Then you could marry a rich widow and...
Please, don't.
David, we have to think about it.
It's still some time in the future. Dr. Wheaton himself said that you'd be around for years.
But did you look into the good doctor's eyes when he said it? David, I did. It's no use fooling ourselves. We're talking of months at best. I know.
I wish it were me, Millie, and not you. I wish I could make that gift to you.
Even if you could, I wouldn't accept it. You'll go on forever. You'll make a century. And I want you to enjoy every moment of it.
Not without you, Millie.
Remember me, but only the good times. Do you know, when I first met you, you were without exception the most arrogant, conceited, exciting man I've ever come across.
And I haven't changed?
No, except now you make me laugh even more.
Oh, can't you knock?
You must take your once-a-week pills tonight, lady.
Woman has a gift for timing that Woody Allen would be proud of.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. That will be all.
Good night, lady.
Good night, Mrs. Rogers.
Oh, good night, Mrs. Rogers.
I do wish you tried to be more considerate towards her, David. Try some of that charm you put to such good use with juries.
I don't see why I should bother. When ever since her husband walked out on us, she's taken it out on me.
Perhaps she thinks she might do the same thing to me one day. I wish we'd been able to have children. Then at least...
Perhaps if you'd married Anthony Blair Booth.
Good heavens, no. Even when he proposed, he did so through instructing solicitors. No, I ended up with the right man.
I am a draper mad with love. I love you more than all the flannelette and calico, candlewick, crushed dimity, and merino. Trousseau, creton, crepon, muslin, poplin, ticken and twill in the whole cloth hall of the world. I have come to take you away to my emporium on the hill, where the change hums on wires. Throw away your little Welsh bed socks and your wedged wool knitted jacket. I will warm your sheets like an electric toaster. I will lie by your side like the Sunday roast.
I will knit your wallet of forget-me-not wool for your money to be comfy. I will warm your heart by the fire so you can slip it under your vest when the shop is cold.
Is it possible that despite having worked for my wife for some considerable time, you misunderstood the relationship between us?
What do you mean?
Exactly what I said.
Mrs. Rogers, do you think Sir David and Lady Metcalf might have got on well together, but you didn't fully appreciate their relationship?
No, my lord, that's not possible. I watched them together over many years. Lady Metcalf was a very charming woman, but Sir David was always drunk and shouting at both of us.
I think what Mrs. Rogers is trying to tell the court, my love, is that she doesn't like me.
No, I don't.
No, in fact, you don't have a good word to say for me, do you?
If there wasn't anything good to say, I would be happy to tell the judge.
So you're only interested in saying harmful things?
No, I didn't say that. You're trying to put words into my mouth like you do with everybody. I only want the truth to come out.
A foregone conclusion? Well, let's hope so. Yes, please do tell me. Mrs. Rogers, just clear away. And I'd love a cup of coffee.
Will Sir David be eating at home tonight?
I doubt it. It's the last day of the Scissor Stabber trial and the jury is still out. So I've really no idea when he'll be home. Absolutely, my dear. I'll tell him the moment he arrives. Has God come home?
Who is it?
Your mother. But you know what he's like. It might be hours before he gets back, especially while he's waiting for a verdict. Celebrating, perhaps, or not, as the case may be. No, I'm fine. Really, I promise. Of course, I will call you the moment he comes in. All right, my dear. Much love. Yes. Goodbye.
You should have a tape made on one of those answer phone contraptions. My dear, of course I'll let him know. The moment he comes in, I realise that David is the most wonderful man in the world and how lucky I am. My dear, of course I'll let him know.
She's an old lady, and she doesn't see nearly enough of you.
And I don't see enough of you.
All right. I wasn't going to ask, but I can't bear the suspense any longer.
Something you wanted to know?
Was Mrs. Cutts guilty or not guilty?
That, my dear, is two questions, only one of which was decided by the jury.
Stop being infuriating. I'm waiting.
Members of the jury, I stand before you today.
Darling, I don't have to listen to the whole of your closing speech, do I?
Well, actually, I was going to begin with my opening speech.
Perhaps we could just have it at a time.
What? How dare you?
What coffee, my lady?
Would you like some? That would be all, thank you.
Very well. The peroration. Members of the jury, you may feel that the Crown, in presenting its case, has failed dismally, as it was conceived in chaos and conducted in confusion.
That's awfully rude, David. What on earth does Anthony Blair Booth have thought of you?
Well, not a lot, probably. Am I to expect a string of mindless interruptions, Millie, or worse than a hostile witness? Now, where was that?
Confusion.
The Crown's dismal failure to produce any evidence which could stand up to cross-examination. Evidence which, when looked at carefully, proved to be nothing more than threads and patches flimsy and fanciful.
Surely Anthony Blair Booth protested.
No, my dear. Unlike you, he knows you do not interrupt defense counsel's closing speech. Now, where was I?
Flimsy and fanciful.
In the extreme. Evidence which under cross-examination proved to be nothing more than hearsay, second and sometimes even third hand. Evidence on which you members of the jury are being asked to rely to decide the fate of the defendant, Beverly Cutts. Is it possible that this slight, gentle lady could have overpowered a 6-foot, 13-stone man and plunged a pair of scissors into him not once, but 7 times?
Could have been asleep.
Millie. Defendant lady made no secret of the fact that she had sexual intercourse with the man Kendrick, but which of you in this jury would send a young woman to jail for the rest of her life on the sole charge that she committed adultery?
But it wasn't the sole charge.
Really? I submit to you that such evidence is no basis on which to build a case against the defendant, and certainly no basis for a conviction for murder. You must be certain, beyond reasonable doubt, that she is a bloody murderess. I repeat, certain that this frail, pitiful lady thrust those scissors again and again, into the body of that huge man.
Huge? Not bad. Then what?
Well, then Mr. Justice Trubshaw summed up, posing the question of who did commit the murder. Mrs. Cutts didn't.
Good point.
He also felt that my client's explanation for her fingerprints being found on the scissors not altogether convincing. He praised Blair Booth for his thoroughness in prosecution and me for my boldness in defence. Whatever that meant, I wasn't sure. And then the jury retired.
Well, come on.
Well, then after 3 hours, they sent a note up to say they couldn't agree.
And?
Well, then, in the end, by a majority verdict of 10-2, Mrs. Cutts was found not guilty.
So she was innocent.
Millie, have you been listening to one word I've said? The jury were convinced by the presentation of the defence, not her case.
So what will happen to Mrs. Cutts now?
Oh, who knows? She left the court in a flood of tears, refusing to utter a word to the press.
Well, that shows a certain sensitivity.
A sensitivity be damned. I understand that she's sold her exclusive life story to the people for 50,000 quid. Who, I'm told, in which she promises to reveal who did murder her lover.
That could prove embarrassing.
Well, only for Blair Booth when she admits she did it. I must remember to get a copy on Sunday.
How did Anthony take the verdict?
Oh, sulked, then marched out of court in a huff. He really is such a bad loser, despite having had such a lot of practice at it.
He's so unsympathetic to the poor man.
Not at all. He brings it on himself. Self-satisfied.
David, have you no regard for Anthony?
Regard for Anthony? I have as much regard for Blair Booth as a chicken does for Colonel Sanders. Now, come on. Let's have a decent drink to celebrate.
All right. Have you had time to eat?
Well, sort of. Upstairs at the Bailey. I must confess I could do with a decent bottle of wine. The Bailey have taken proof of innocence to an extreme. Ever since those obscenity trials, the only wine you can purchase is Blue Nun.
All right, then. The Mouton Rothschild.
Oh, no, we're down to the last case.
But it's a celebration. And in any case, I've already decanted a bottle.
You wicked woman. You always knew I'd win, didn't you?
Hello? Yes, it is. It's a Mr. Holbrook.
Holbrook?
He says it's important.
I'll take it.
While you're chatting, I'll ask Mrs. Rogers to fetch the wine.
Hello, Holbrook. Yes, well, you'll have to sell them by close of business tomorrow. Yes, but how was I to know the government were going to send the inspectors in? Sell the damn things. Don't worry about the shortfall. I'll soon be able to cover it. Now, don't push me. Your senior partner remains one of my closest friends. Get out, you stupid woman! Get out! Call me tomorrow at my chambers. I will have secured the money by then. listens to conversations that are none of her business.
That's nonsense, and you know it. She wouldn't begin to understand your private conversations. She couldn't be more honest and loyal.
Loyal to you, perhaps.
Oh, I wish you'd apologise to her. But I know you won't. I'll have to do it for you. Was it Mr. Holbrook who upset you?
No.
Who is he, a client?
Yes, a client. I told him to telephone me tomorrow at my chambers.
Oh, I'm sorry, David. I'd have put him off if I'd known, but he said it was important.
Yes, I know. But importance is relative, isn't it? As you see, for me, only you are important. Will you join me?
As is the celebration? Congratulations, David. I know I shouldn't say it since everyone else does anyway, but it must have been a triumph.
In some ways.
What's this? Confession? You mean you're fallible?
I make the occasional howler.
Tell, please do. Problem, David?
Would you like some more coffee, the lady?
No, thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Please note, she didn't offer to bring me a cup of coffee.
She is well aware of your drinking habits. But in any case, the way you treat the poor woman, who could blame her? She's terrified of you.
Yes, well, I'd explain about barks and bites if I thought she'd understand.
Well, she certainly sees you as some sort of wild dog. And I've lost enough servants over the years because of your temper.
Yes, I know, but I'm mellowing now. Hadn't you noticed? And I promise I'll never bark at her again.
Good. Because she has a completely distorted view of you, which is a pity. Because you're a darling, really.
Am I? Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. Then you have such wonderful judgment and impeccable taste. That's why I married you. Come on, let's have another drink.
Be careful, or you'll have to open another bottle and you're almost out.
So long as it's just you and me, let's finish the whole case.
No, save it. Drink it in memory of me.
Really?
Oh, David, I only meant, you know, something that we could look back on, something that we shared together.
I wouldn't need this to assist me.
I know. It's a will. Let me give instructions for the last few bottles to be hidden.
Certainly not. In any case, it wouldn't be long before I found them.
So?
Well, I'd polish them off when you weren't ready.
Then I would have you arrested for theft.
What, me? You have a job to prove that.
Why?
Well, because before the case ever came to court, I would have destroyed the evidence.
That's cheating. I would personally inform the prosecuting counsel of the facts.
Anthony Blair Booth QC, no doubt.
Of course, a most distinguished advocate.
Pompous twit.
And I would personally enter the witness box. Drunk, my lord, always drunk the whole of our married life.
A vicious, prejudiced woman who always lacked compassion and understanding, driving her mild, tolerant husband to the solace of the bottle.
An uncontrollable drunk, knowing that alcohol was destroying his brain, but too befuddled to do anything about it. His secret fear that one day his younger rival might confront and humiliate him.
Younger! Woman! You will live to regret those words!
Oh no, please, don't hit me, not again, I can't take any more. Well, not with the Mouton Rothschild.
I wouldn't waste it on you, woman. I must look for a non-vintage bottle.
I confess.
Lady Metcalf, you have been found guilty of a most heinous crime by 12 good men.
No good women on the jury, I note.
Of falsely accusing and constantly nagging the defendant, Sir David Metcalfe, who for 28 years has been a lovable, sweet-tempered, attentive and gentle husband. Have you anything to say before I pass judgment?
Have mercy, please.
I have no choice in these matters. I must pass the maximum sentence the law allows. I sentence you to 15 years more with Sir David Metcalfe.
I appeal.
Appeal dismissed.
Oh, David.
Why do the young always assume that love is their prerogative, eh?
Stop being a silly, sentimental old thing and let's finish off the bottle.
Good idea. Are you all right?
I'm fine. Just keep me laughing. It does help.
Good heavens! Discretion at last! You see, persevere, and the message will always get through.
What is it,
You must take your once-a-week pills tonight, milady.
Oh, not a black mark for the master. No hot water bottle on his side of the bed tonight.
Good night, milady. Good night, Mrs. Rogers.
Isn't life a terrible thing? Thank God!
You must remember that her memories of married life are not all that happy. And it can't be all that much fun being alone.
Alone until she dies. Bessie Bighead, hired help. Born in the workhouse, smelling of the cowshed. Snores bass and gruff on a couch of straw in a loft in Salt Lake Farm. And picks a posy of daisies to put on the grave of Gomer Owen, who kissed her once by the pigsty when she wasn't looking. And never kissed her again, though she was looking all the time. Oh, Millie, I'm sorry.
David, I must be such a burden to you.
Never.
David, I do worry about you. You're really not facing up to it. I want you to prepare as I am. I don't want you to be an old codger at the club like Benson. I do hope you'll marry again. A nice widow, someone who can cook.
I will not listen to such stupidity. I do not want anyone else, Millie.
But you have a long life ahead of you, and so much still to achieve.
No one to share it with. To get the full value of happiness, you have to share it with someone you love. Whither shall I go, and with whom shall I share my triumph when the jury says not guilty? There'll be no one to complain at about the biased old judge. No one to whom I can expose the latest scandal in chambers. No one will be able to quote the next line from Undermilk Wood to me and still pretend that she was hearing the words for the first time. No one who will hold my hand and say, whatever your excess is, I still love you. I don't know why you have to die, so don't ask me to be sensible, practical, or especially logical. I too want to rage against the dying of the light.
I don't want you to.
Can't you see what it would be like? Hamilton clucking over me like a mother hen, Robert considerate as an elder son, my mother telephoning me endlessly, asking me how I am. Before long, I'll be saying in the corridors of the Old Bailey, not half the man he was. And then my secret will be out. As you see, without you, Millie, I'm less than half a man.
David, I do love you. Will you help me up to bed?
Sorry, I've been prattling on. I only thank God that he allowed me to have you at all. But I wonder what I did to anger him, that he couldn't have allowed me a little longer.
It's a beautiful closing speech, David. But you really must be sensible. Come on.
On the night in question, did Lady Metcalfe take her once-a-week pill, the red one?
Yes.
And then a white sleeping pill?
Yes, sir, at about 9:45.
So she should not have taken another red pill for at least 7 days?
Correct, sir. Those were the clear instructions I was given by Dr. Whedon.
I understand. And was Sir David in the room at the time?
Yes, he was.
And did he witness what was going on?
Of course he did. He was standing there, wasn't he?
Yes, but could Sir David have had any way of knowing which pill Lady Metcalfe was taking?
He must have known, because when I give it to Lady Metcalf, I always describe it as the once-a-week pill, So he knew all right.
Always, sir. Sir David had heard the expression before.
Many times.
Millie? Millie? Oh my God, Millie. What happened? Are you all right?
I think I must have fallen.
I'm so sorry, I had no idea you were up. Have you hurt yourself?
I think I've only bruised my arm.
Why didn't you call me?
I'm so tired after the trial, I didn't want to disturb you.
That's silly.
Anyway, now you are up. I'd love a cup of tea.
Of course.
And if I could just take another pill, I'll be fine.
Right. In you reeled as drunk as a deacon, with a big wet bucket and a fish trail full of stout. And you looked at me and you said, God has come home, you said. I must have drunk more than I realised last night, otherwise I'd have heard you get up. I put the kettle on.
Thank you. David, I really do hope it won't be too long now. I really don't think I can take that much more. I find the pain harder to bear each day. I'm really trying to stay alive for you. But I need to ask you to let me go.
But you haven't even pruned the rose bushes yet.
David, you are so wonderful, and I do love you so much.
I know. And I love you too. But I have to leave you now.
Why?
Because I hear the kettle boil. I couldn't find the old grave, but I discovered a couple of tea bags. You know, the ones those chimpanzees drink on television.
Would you put the pen in the tea for me, please, David? I did this on. I find it easy to take that way. No, David. Please don't talk. I'm too tired even to laugh. I'll be all right now, David.
I love you till death do us part. And then we shall be together forever and ever. A new parcel of ribbons has come from Carmarthen today. All the colours of the rainbow. I wish I could tie a ribbon in your hair, a white one. Oh, but it cannot be. I dreamed last night that you were all dripping wet. You sat on my lap as the Reverend Jenkins went down the street. I see you got a mermaid on your lap, he said. He lifted his hat. Oh, he's a proper Christian. Not like Cherry Owen, who said you should have thrown her back, he said. My heart is in your bosom, and yours is in mine. God be with you always, my family Price, and keep you lovely for me in his heavenly mansion. Millie? Oh, Millie, please. I'm sorry. Don't go yet.
When you have weighed up all the evidence that has been presented to you, you will decide upon your verdict. It would be quite wrong of me to give you any idea of what I think. The verdict is yours alone. Put out of your mind any anger, sympathy, or any other emotions. If the evidence does not satisfy you beyond reasonable doubt, you will bring a verdict of not guilty. But on the other hand, if it does, your verdict, however unpalatable it must be guilty. I do not envy you your task, but you must be resolute in your duty. When the jury bailiff has been sworn, you will retire to consider your verdict, and in due course return to let me know how you find.
Will the defendant please rise? Will the foreman of the jury please stand? Mr. Foreman, do you find the prisoner, Sir David Metcalfe, guilty or not guilty of murder?
Come in, Lionel. Bang on time.
I'm glad you asked me. You've been living like a hermit since the verdict. Fall off the hook, not answering letters, refusing even to see your closest friends.
Well, now I've answered all the letters and even written some of my own. The phone is back on the hook. You've been invited round for a drink.
What are these doing here?
Oh, the police returned them. I even had to sign for them. After all, they were Millie's. Millie left everything to me, as Anthony Blair Booth was only too keen to point out.
Well, that's all over now. It was an unpleasant experience, but a satisfactory conclusion. Now, let's drink a toast to that at least. The root of jar.
Yes, the very last bottle. Millie asked me to save it for a special occasion. I preferred to drink them alone with her in my mind as a celebration of a different kind. But I wanted you to share the last bottle.
Come, let us make this a happier occasion. I have an extraordinary case here of a boy who killed his mother, having dabbled in black magic. I have no doubt it will totally reinstate you in the bar.
Black magic murder case. Almost tempts me, Lionel. But I can't return to the bar. You see, it's no longer possible.
But why not?
Because I did kill my wife.
But it was an accident. We all realise that.
No, Lionel, it was quite deliberate. That's what she wanted. I couldn't refuse her. I loved her too much.
Oh my God. I wish you hadn't told me that. Why didn't you inform the police?
I'm afraid I didn't consider it was any of their business.
But you are chairman of the Bar Council. Of all people, you cannot put yourself above the law.
Well, on this occasion, I decided to be my own judge and jury. I underestimated the honest Mrs. Rogers and her chance to tell the truth as she saw it.
You could have told the truth in court.
No, I did, by the standards of any politician. I don't consider I told any lies. Perhaps I was economical with the truth. What is truth? Asked jesting Pilate, and would not stay for answer. Do any of us ever know what the whole truth is? But I had intended to confess. I had even rehearsed the statement and delivered at the right time. I know it would have convinced any jury.
Then why didn't you?
Because quite suddenly I realized I was in a real fight. Blair Booth was after me, and very close to convincing that jury. If I had then told the whole truth, it would have looked like a pathetic apologia, an attempt to crawl out of my problems. If I had delivered that statement, the one I wanted to make, I had to make it with dignity. Don't leave your wine line. It is the last of the 61. I suddenly realized, Lionel, that Blair Booth and I were like two old antelopes locked in battle for the last time. But for the first time, I'd allowed him to get the better of me.
But why?
Well, because the person I was defending didn't care about the outcome. I had lost the one thing I loved. Even the pleasure of beating Blair Booth couldn't bring Millie back. But I knew it would be my last case.
It certainly will have been. After what you just said, you can never hope to practice at the bar again.
That's why I asked you over. So that one person would know the truth. The whole truth. Because you're the most honest man I know, Lionel. I needed to tell someone I trusted and respected. I also needed someone to help me crack this last bottle in memory of Lily. By the way, I've left you what remains of my cellar. It's not up to much now that the Mouton Rothschild has been finished, but I know you'll appreciate what remains.
What are you suggesting?
Shortly before you arrived, Lionel, you're never late, old fellow. I took 3 of the cyclotoxylix pills in my first glass of wine, which we know is fatal. Like Millie, the once a week pills, the red ones. She died very peacefully, Lionel. No, Lionel, please. Please don't. Please. Thank you, Lionel. It was good of you to come, be with me. I've written all the necessary letters, cleared up the estate. Everything's neat and tidy. The bulk of it is to go to the Chester Beatty Institute. I've looked after my mother, of course. And I've even left a little something to Mrs. Rogers. I was delighted to read that Robert has become a QC. He earned it. I'm only sorry I won't have the chance to chide him from the judge's bench. Millie would have enjoyed that. She liked Robert. God bless him. And she would have revelled in the black magic murder trial. I wonder what she could prepare for dinner to commemorate such an occasion. You were always good at guessing, Lionel. What would Millie have cooked the night before the black magic murder trial? I see the boys of summer in their rule, and death shall have no dominion. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. I will go gentle into that good night.